is Noriko Satake. I work as a dentist in Los Angeles. I came across this book, Children of the Atomic Bomb, written by Dr. James Yamazaki. He is the pioneer of nuclear medicine and did a study about effects of radiation in children in Nagasaki, Japan. Today, I had the pleasure of meeting with him and talking with him.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Yamazaki.
Hey.
It's so pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Well, I was glad to hear that you're from the western part of Japan.
Yes.
Part of Japan I've never seen, but I've always wanted to go.
Yes, it's beautiful out there. So I heard that you're born in Los Angeles.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You're native of here.
Right.
And your parents were from Japan?
Yes. So my father was from Matsumoto in Nagano Ken.
Oh, okay. Okay.
My mother was from Osaka.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
But your family was all here for the and then you went to UCLA.
Yes.
Is that right? And then you went to the Midwest for medical school.
Yes, I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee.
Oh, okay. So you were a U.S. soldier in World War II?
Yes, because how I got there was that we knew war was going to come between Japan and United States, and we said in our family discussion, what are we going to do? And my father was the opinion that we were here to immigrate to the United States. This was our home. And when the war ends, as all war ends, he said, if we want to have a footing here, we would have to participate in the war effort like all of the Jones and Smith boys, that is to join the armed forces.
So it was your father's
Well, I think we had a general
partially.
understanding. Of course, I was a scoutmaster all the time.
Yes.
I was going to UCLA. And so I put in my application in the fall of 1941.
1941.
Yes. And I got my commission about November 25th for the reserve officers.
So where did you serve in World War II?
Well, we were assigned to a medical field service school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then immediately assigned to combat units to train at the hospitals, but actually with an infantry division, 106th Infantry in Franklin, Indiana.
In Indiana?
Yes, and we just was getting organized there for a few months, and then went overseas.
To overseas?
Yes, to
Where
England, England, and
England.
then to France and to the front on the front at that time. In December of '44, the American Army was right on the border of Germany, and we were assigned to an area of Germany, Luxembourg, and Belgium.
Oh, and I understand you were in the Battle of Bulge,
Yes.
the largest
Yes.
battle of World War II?
We had been assigned to our position for about 5 days, or less than a week, when this, all of a sudden one morning, this big artillery barrage started.
Wow.
And that was the Battle of the Bulge. And our unit, the 106th Infantry, was the first part of that bulge.
The first part?
And within 5 days, out of 10,000, 7,000 were casualties. You know, when you hear about 10 men being killed in Afghanistan or Iraq in a day, they considered that fairly remarkable.
Yes.
But here was just in a few days, there 7,000 out of 10,000 became casualties. And I was assigned as a combat medic. They call it a battalion surgeon.
Yes.
But you're with the soldiers right there on the battlefield. About at break of dawn, the German let loose with everything they had. So by 9 o'clock, we knew we were all pummeled, and one of our officers, I think, took off his undershirt and surrendered.
Oh, you were a POW?
Yes, until the end of the war. That was about 5 months.
5 months.
4 to 5 months.
Oh, I see. So you ended up going to pediatrics.
Yes.
How did you choose that?
All of these medical officers wanted more training, and I just was interested in getting good training.
Any training?
Any training, and so I was applying to many areas, and the group at University of Pennsylvania wrote letters for me, and one of them replied from the Children's Hospital in in Philadelphia. They asked, your letter says you're interested in internal medicine. I wrote back and said, I'm interested in internal medicine in children also.
Okay.
And so that led to an interview and my appointment at the Children's Hospital.
Oh, I see. So you went where the need
Yeah,
was.
at the 1740 Bainbridge Street in Philadelphia.
So, Dr. Yamazaki, I came across this book that you've authored, Children of the Atomic Bomb. So, how did you end up going to Nagasaki for this research?
I was recruited by the national academies. They were forming a commission to study the after effects of the bomb. And there was a big commission that studied the after effects of the bombs in between October and December of 1945.
Okay. How did you get recruited to do this project in Nagasaki?
Well, there was two sources. The main source was with the director of the Children's Hospital where I was doing my residency in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati.
He was one of the committee members in the National Academy, and he returned and suggested that I go to Japan because it would give me a broader outlook on medicine. And that also he said, hey Jim, you'll be on the ground floor of atomic medicine. It's something
as a pioneer.
That's a new thing.
So what was your mission in Japan?
One was the National Academy said, do you have any special studies that you would want to do? They said, as a pediatrician, they were very interested in finding out what would happen to children, so that we would give them every opportunity to study the children. And then in Cincinnati Children's Hospital, there was a doctor who was studying the radiation environmental effects on the developing fetus. And he had done studies on radiation effects on the developing fetus, and it was quite damaging. So we discussed that with him, and he had me for a year develop a format and how we could do a study of a large population on what the effect of the bomb would be on the pregnant mother and the fetus.
Because the effect of the atomic bomb would be much more greater than just environmental radiation.
Yes, and so that would be one of our studies. The other study was the effect on young children compared to adults. And the most important study that involved the scientists at that time was the radiation effect on the next generation. Because all of the experimental studies, without exception, in plants and animals, all plants and animals, radiation damaged the genes, the mutation for the next generation. And they felt that humans would be no exception, so that one of the main focus was to see if they could conduct a study to see if there would be any effect on the generation of children conceived after the bombing, that is, to the survivors, what would affect their children.
So what did you find out from these studies?
Well, the largest amount of effort required was to see what was the outcome to the next generation, the genetic effect. So there was a situation in which there was rationing so that every mother born in the city was identifiable. So in both Hiroshima and Japan, for 5 years, all the pregnancies, all the children born to these survivors, children born to the survivors, were examined by the ABCC doctors. There's 50,000 children examined.
Both in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yes. When the children were identified, and the commission's doctor went to the home and examined the babies at the bedside. And those who had any abnormalities were studied more in details.
This ABCC was
The Atomic
Stands
Bomb
for?
Casualty Commission. That was funded by the Congress and was supervised by the National Academy of Sciences and National Research Council. So it's a very well-organized type of enterprise.
After you collected all the data, how did you summarize your findings?
We were most directly involved in the outcome of the pregnancies. That is, the mothers who were pregnant at the time of the bombing, what happened to the fetus. And there was a striking effect on the miscarriages and stillbirth, and adverse effect. And then on the children born to these mothers, there was severe damage to the developing brain, manifested by mental retardation, stunted growth, and in the survivors, these children also developed seizures later.
So you knew there were short-term effects of the radiation, but were there long-term effects also?
There was no obvious genetic effect. On the other hand, genetic understanding has really expanded a lot since then. New modalities of seeing genetic injuries, diseases that are genetically involved. But at that time, there are few ways of examining individuals except by examining the child itself, the offspring. Now we have new modalities of examining genetic damage with all the DNA findings that are developing. So ours was, the effect of the Atomic Bomb Commission was to first just see what happened to the children.
Who were
Now the direction is what happened to the DNA. So they have gathered large samples of the most heavily irradiated parents, so that they're what they call immortalize the blood. So as new developments to examine genetic effects, DNA effects are found, they could be, these blood samples will be available for studies. The most important event is that the radiation affects the DNA and it damages the DNA. So injury to the human body subsequently is based on that finding. So, for example, even though the genetic studies, extensive genetic studies we discussed reveal no definite genetic effects, there's no question there is a genetic effect.
There is.
DNA is damaged.
Yes.
It's just that the studies was, the way it was conducted would not reveal that kind of damage.
So we still need to do more studies.
And they are being done.
So 6 decades into nuclear medicine, do we know more conclusively the effects of the radiation on the human body?
The two major findings is the DNA effect on cancer. And that has been firmly established, that one of the major findings is that
Radiation causes leukemia.
will cause leukemia and other cancers.
And other cancers. I understand that you're retired from the practice of pediatrics, but you keep yourself very busy. What are your activities?
Well, I try to keep informed about the ongoing studies, but we need a general body of people, including the government, that would inform the people that this was a very profound event to humanity. The injury to the genetic substance of the human body. The people should know this is what a nuclear weapon will do. We know that it develops cancer. We know that it will affect the developing fetus. What else will it do?
How are you communicating the findings to the general public? I understand you've lectured at UCLA and you have a website, childrenoftheatomicbomb.com.
The most powerful way of communicating is to have a body of information that has the backing of a university, educational system, or the government.
Mm-hmm. Even as recently as a few weeks ago, you mentioned you did a lecture at United Nations headquarters. What are some of the things that you really want to communicate to the general public, to the whole world?
Well, I want them to know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was the first primal atomic nuclear weapons. And then 9 years later, 1954, the megaton bomb was released. And here
in
was
Marshall Islands.
In the Marshall Islands. And here was an area of several thousand square miles, about 120 miles from the point of the explosion, and about 40 miles wide, was contaminated with radioactive substance. And that all the people in that area would be endangered. And this is the kind of future we face if we have an atomic war. People should have these very definite images in mind, and it should be very part of everyone's body of information that we have. People look at the internet and get massive amount of information. This should be at the top of the list. It's not difficult to obtain and to understand.
What is your message to people today?
Well, I think first, what is a nuclear weapon? What does it do?
Mm-hmm.
And
what does it do?
Well, it has changed warfare completely. A nuclear attack in 1 minute destroys human beings in a vast area.
Is it much, much more in effect than any other weapons?
One bomber carrying one plane instantly kills thousands of people.
And any other bombs did not do that?
Never before. And not only kill the people, but has a long-term after effect.
Of the radiation?
Yes. So that, like in Hiroshima, the city was destroyed.
Yes. And so as a general public, for me, and any of the contemporaries for me, I think we've all seen the pictures of the mushroom cloud after the atomic bomb, but we don't really know what's underneath the clouds, and you went there and saw it. When I was growing up in Japan, there were a comic book that told us about the effect of the bombs called Hadashi no Gen.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Barefoot Gen, you're familiar with it?
It's a very nice, I think that's a nice way of telling school children about it.
It was in all the elementary school. It was one of the few comic books that was in elementary school library, because they usually don't put comic books. It's very educational. But what about here in the United States? Are the kids educated about the effects of the bomb, and what is it that you can communicate to us, to our young generation of new leaders about the atomic bomb?
That any weapon of war is disastrous if it hits one body. And here we're, at one instance, thousands of people involved. Now with the nuclear armaments, we have hundreds of thousands will be involved. And that war has never ended in human history. And that we should make every attempt to make sure that we are not involved in a nuclear event in the future.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and speaking with me. It's such an honor to speak with someone from your generation who's done so much for our country.
Well, I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you, especially someone of your generation, because it's your future. Ours is over the hill. Yours is just coming, and I'm really concerned for the generation that's coming.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I was so inspired to get to know Dr. James Yamazaki. I sensed his feelings of urgency to communicate to the people today about detrimental effects of atomic bombs. I realized the importance of my generation to carry on his message.